What was supposed to be the next big thing, but totally flopped. Amazon's shopping buttons. They pushed really hard for those and I never saw the point. Connie 2012. My friend who studies medicine had to install Second Life about 2 years ago for a class meeting. I don't get why they couldn't have used Skype, but okay. Soap shoes. These were like normal shoes, but you could grind on rails with them via an indent in the sole. If you heard of these things from somewhere that wasn't Sonic Adventure 2, please tell me where? And please tell me where I can buy a pair. McDonald's pizza. Not entirely relevant, but I like the trend where everybody wanted the smallest cell phone possible. For 20 years cell phones got smaller and smaller, often being the main selling point of the phone. Then all of a sudden you could watch videos on your phone. And almost overnight the trend reversed to larger is better. Mini disc. Man, I remember as a kid seeing the Ninja Turtles and Dick Tracy use videocoms and thinking it was so cool and wanting one for myself, and now if someone FaceTimes me I have a panic attack. Movie pass. I sure got my money's worth while it was around. Our and micro consoles in general. Not sure if this one has totally flopped yet, but I noticed while in Costco the other day that there are no longer any curved TVs. If Costco is no longer carrying them, then I think we can assume they're going the way of the dodo. And yet curved monitors are popular right now. Quadraphonic entertainment systems in the early 1970s were supposed to replace stereophonic systems. Now they are chiefly remembered for inspiring the name of The Who's second rock opera. HD DVD. Still remember half the movies being blue and the others red. 3D TV. From what I've gathered in this thread, Google threw a lot of to see if it would stickle mayo. Google Plus was supposed to be the answer to Facebook. Johnny Manziel. Vine 2. This one might be a bit obscure just because I've only ever met one other person familiar with it. But Google's Project Era modular smartphone was looking like it could have been the end all be all of smartphones. Based off the Phonoblock's idea of having a Lego-like hot swappable module phone. The idea was that you could switch out any components of the phone on the fly. Camera. Fingerprint scanner. Even different quality screens. Conceptually, it really looked like it could take over the phone market, as it would lead to people not having to buy whole new phones anymore, but rather replacement or upgraded parts to a phone they already liked, thereby reducing costs and increasing utility. You don't want a phone with 5 cameras that inflate the cost unnecessarily. Just buy a 1 camera module. You want a 1440p Super AMOLED screen to replace your 720p regular screen? Buy one and swap it in. However, like many Google projects, it died off for myriad reasons and the long-standing era of $1,000 smartphone slabs lived on. Google Wave. It was supposed to replace email with a more collaborative approach. Essentially it was like a dynamically created discussion board you'd share with select people, and you could have a more readable discussion than one with a bunch of forwards and CCs and the like. I thought it was a good idea, but it flopped big time and Google got rid of it after a few years. P.T. Asbestos. Technically it was a hit, right until it flopped when people figured out the whole inhaling rock fibers is not healthy thing. That streaming service that lasted like 2 months. A sickwippy I think. Even bad timing aside, a mobile-based streaming service at a time when no one could really leave their house. The marketing was just horrible. I saw ads for it for nearly a week before I realized it was a new video streaming service. And by that point was so annoyed by the ads untrusting everything I didn't care at all. Just out of spite. Also, I mean, it was just YouTube you have to pay for and got worse content. Edit. It was Quibi. It made so little impact I couldn't recall at first. Hoverboards? I remember in a span of 3 months everyone had them and showed them off and then they just disappeared. Edit. I always hate the fact that they were called hoverboards. Google Glass. Laser discs the size of records. Airship travel. These were the next awesome way to travel long distances. In fact, the spire on top of the Empire State Building was meant as an anchoring point for airships. The Hindenburg kind of put a damper on it, though. Crystal Pepsi. New Coke. Orange juice and toothpaste flavored Lay's potato chips. Segways were supposed to revolutionize travel and replace the automobile. Now they are just used for guided tours for dorks and tourist traps. Hydrogen cars were a promising new form of motorized vehicle. They were supposed to be incredibly good for the environment, emitting only water as the exhaust. They exist, but not like how some people imagined. I was a pretty big hydrogen car believer at the time. There are some hydrogen stations, but mostly centered around California. Thing is that the hydrogen is quite expensive and not very efficient compared to smaller engines, hybrids, and EVs. The hydrogen is also somewhat inefficient to produce, store, and distribute as well. You can actually get a hydrogen car though. They're out there. The Toyota Mirai is a really good example. Out of all hydrogen cars, that one is definitely most popular. In fact, Toyota pays for $15,000 worth of hydrogen in your first few years of ownership since it's so expensive. This means that for your first 3-ish years of owning one, you might not have to pay a penny in fuel. As you can see, I'm still a hydrogen advocate. Don't expect to be able to take it very far from your nearest hydrogen station though. Edit. Elizabeth Holmes. Second Life. In the beginning, companies even bought real estate and there to allow people to visit them. The US version of coupling. It was peddled hard by NBC to be the next Friends when that show ended. Ike. There was interviews with the cast and they were already musing about the show going into multiple seasons. There was big buzz since it was such a hit in the UK. It lasted 4 episodes. The Segway. It was supposed to change the way everyone lived. The invention of the century or something like that. A really big deal. You guys remember the Fire Festival disaster? New Coke. Xbox Kinect. Supersonic travel. Concorde was developed to fly commercially and cruise at just over Mach 2. People complained that it was too loud. Insanely high ticket prices and fuel consumption was astronomical. It have really changed flight travel. US adoption of the metric system. The Titanic. QR codes. After so many years, they're finally getting some traction during COVID. I wonder if it will last. The biggest problem is that until a few years ago, smartphones didn't read QR codes by default. So you had to have an app for it, which nobody can be bothered with. Trump's better and cheaper health insurance plan. Zune. TBF. Zune was pretty good. They were built like tanks, held tons of songs, videos, and had a great application. Anthem. Bought it on launch for full price. It was the worst mistake in my life and I decided I'd never buy something at launch again. And then comes Cyberpunk. Fusion energy. But it's still in the works. It's just 30 years away. Noise cancelling systems. We have it for headphones. But it was supposed to be implemented in jets, motors, lawnmowers. And I'm still waiting. Hyperloop. Fidget spinners? How could they have failed if they did absolutely nothing? Helios, I felt so cool in middle school. Cyberpunk. Maybe not a total flop, but when it came out, it was not the game it was supposed to be. Advanced photo system. Meant to mitigate some issues of traditional analog cameras, it had enough problems of its own that it could have likely failed anyway. Edge screen on smartphones. Thank God. Impossible to get a proper protective case for a curved edge phone. Laser discs. Being one of the first homes to have this in a Scandinavian country, I felt so cool. Then came the DVD and everyone started getting that at the same time. But yeah. Cool for 5 minutes. Still remember the sound of the laser going from top to bottom. Star Wars had so many discs. Google Penis. It was supposed to revolutionize dating. You meet someone online. Guy shows his penis to the webcam. And the other person 3D prints that penis and goes to town on themselves, and that way couples can know if they are a good fit before ever hooking up for real. But Google underestimated the number of people with 3D printers. Shame, because it was a genius idea. Probably my best. The project failed and I was banned from the campus. Later Google claimed I never even worked there. Area 51 raid. Yokai Watch. It was huge in Japan. But it wasn't the alleged POC registered Simon killer that it was touted to be. Hopefully the European Super League. 3D movies. Seemed like a cool idea to have things on screen jump out at you, but taking the glasses on and off again was a pain in the ass, and overall the effect looked kinda tacky. I love how half the things in this thread is from Google. The Super League. Hopefully. Ulster weekend. The 21st of December 2012. My penis. Okay, be realistic, it was never gonna be big. The Virtual Boy. Y2K. It was a flop because the entire industry mobilized to make sure it would flop. That was the point. Using Bitcoin as an actual currency. This is what I don't get. There is no way for that to be a currency. Wanna buy a Tesla? You can use Bitcoin. Yeah. But what if Bitcoin goes up $5,000 tomorrow? You just overpaid for your car by $5,000. What if it goes down? Well, Tesla just lost $5,000. Bitcoin cannot by definition be a currency. It has no store of value. So, what is it? It's a post-it note. But even a post-it has some utility. You can write a note on it. Might be showing my age, but the Apple Newton. It's before there were smartphones. There were these things called PDAs, or personal digital assistants. Touchscreens weren't a thing yet. And this early in the development of computer technology, writing things by hand was still pretty popular. Enter the Apple Newton. A device that could be written on with an electronic pen. And its software would recognize your handwriting and convert it to neatly typed reminders on your calendar, etc. It has 2 problems. 1. It was exorbitantly expensive, and 2. It often didn't work. If you wrote a word in your horrible cursive, the Newton might interpret it as an entirely different word. So if you wrote bake, it wouldn't come up with something close like fake. It would come up with something entirely different like robe. Not only did it fail, but it failed so spectacularly that it caused other companies to steer entirely clear of the concept of handwriting recognition software. Zune. I didn't see it mentioned, but zip disks and Palm Pilots were big for a couple years and then quickly were outpaced by CDs and cell phones. At the time, video calling with your phone completely flopped because 3G couldn't support it. There was so much advertising about this thing that was meant to be huge, but the tech really didn't work yet. But it did blow up later on with 4G. Better phones, Wi-Fi, and more public spaces. Sega's Dreamcast. Star Wars. The Old Republic was supposed to be the World of Warcraft killer. It was honestly a good game. But they botched it on launch by having too many servers, leaving them all feeling vastly underpopulated. Making what little endgame content there was worthless since you couldn't find groups to do it with. Lot of responses saying a lot of games market themselves as the WoW killer. This is true. But a lot of the hype wasn't coming from the marketing in this case. It was actually coming from players participating in the beta. And rightfully so, because the early game is solid and there was a good population on the beta server. Suicide Squad. A businessman as president of the United States. Yeah. He was going to run the country like a business and never run it at a loss like a good businessman would do. Then he runs the biggest budget deficit ever. It's almost as if countries and businesses aren't the same thing. And that a businessman running a country is just going to choose short-term gain over long-term sustainability. Since that's what the shareholders want. The DCEU. Specifically the original Justice League. Pretty obvious what it tried and failed to contend with. We Work We Live. A classic case of something that was a good idea and actually at the right time, but was made to flop by being run into the ground by an unbalanced leader who was right about the ideas being timely and useful, but completely overselling it and taking a bunch of salivating venture capitalists down a primrose path. It also didn't help that so much of it was really a sham and almost a Ponzi scheme. It's not always about being the wrong idea or even the right idea at the wrong time. Sometimes it's just led by the wrong person. 3D printing. I was supposed to be able to print a dining room table and chairs from my house. Where's that tech? 3D printing is alive and thriving in the hobby and industrial sectors. Many companies, mine included, use them daily for prototyping. And I have 3 different ones at home. You wouldn't download a car. It exists but isn't financially feasible at the consumer level. It was used to create a replica of Otzi the Iceman for museums and archaeological study. Zip drives. Zip drives were awesome for a short period of time. We used them in college, early 2000s, constantly for large file transfers and storage. Their window of relevancy was short but it was impressive. It just couldn't keep up with CDRW. Then USB sticks came along and functionally buried them all in the portable storage device category. Cyberpunk 2077. LOL. Quibi. The 2010 live-action Avatar. The Last Airbender movie. My goddaughter and her friends went to see it in full Kyoshi, edit. Kyoshi warriors, costume makeup. They left the theater in tears. Went home. And binged the entire series over the next 3 days. The Murder Hornets, everybody just kinda forgot about him. Smart diapers. I'm pretty sure Pampers sells them, but imagine it won't be long before they are discontinued. It's an idea that's been posted on mommy blogs, childcare forums, magazines, news articles. Every so often I'll see a story online while doing some childcare research. I don't know a single parent, nanny, early childhood educator, caregiver that has or wants to use a smart diaper. The only way I could see it being useful is for night or for a special needs child. The idea is still being pushed as a luxury item for millennials, but it's just nonsense. What's even funnier is that the tech is almost backwards. Cloth diapering has become insanely popular. Virtual reality. I remember in the 90s it was all the talk. You would see it in demos at the mall or boardwalks. People would be all low and awes about it. Then it just went away and nobody gave a damn. That's because the tech isn't totally here. But with modern headset it's nearly what the 90s dreamed of. VR is pretty big right now because the home VR setup is becoming cheap enough that normal people can purchase the hardware and software. The only issue that persists is marketing and having a large enough library of games to entice gamers and non-gamers alike. If you look at how many VR setups are on the market now, you can extrapolate that the tech and industry for it is there. It's just in its infancy. Mini disc. Mixer. Microsoft's Twitch. Failed spectacularly. Currently relevant to gamers. Balan Wonderland. A cute platform adventure, with the same aesthetic style. And by the creator of Nights into Dreams for the Sega Saturn, that completely bombs in the gameplay department. The reason it fits into this thread though is because the creator, Yuji Naka, was so confident in it that he established a subsidiary of Square, the company, called Balan Company, expecting to turn it into a franchise. I was genuinely hoping it would have been an awesome game. Because the concept of monster costume powers is cool and reminds me of the game in New Game Plus, second season of the anime. But every review that's come out has been extremely negative. Edit. Balan Wonderworld. Apparently, Wonderland sounds much better. Google Plus was supposed to be the new Facebook but bigger or something. It absolutely did not disappear quickly. They strung it along for years and tried to bake it into every aspect of using Google services. The segue. Go back and look at the press at the time. You would have thought they were reinventing the wheel. HD DVD. HD DVD. Wasn't there a bit in Tropic Thunder where Jay Baruchel's character talks about the HD DVD versus 4K debate and said it has something to do with what the PRN industry preferred? Segways. Dude marketed them like they were going to change the world. The Saber Triangle Tablet. Tablets. They were the tools that would change the way the schools work, and we had a bunch of schools hoarding tablets like crazy. Just to see it flop as an educational tool and rise as a cheap babysitter. The final season of Game of Thrones. Fall Guys. Then Among Us rose to power and choked the competition. 3D TV and movies. Lol me when I was placed in advanced classes early in life. Soda Freakin' Roadways. 3D TV. I had a friend in high school who was preparing to go to film school. She swore up and down that 3D TV was the way of the future and one day all movies and TV shows would be in 3D. Vine. It was successful in the way that it was innovative in getting people hooked on an app. This one is pretty old. But the Microsoft Zune. Trump's second election landslide victory. The Star Wars sequels, 7, 8, 9. Everyone thought they would be good with the New Day special effects, but they had a terrible story and terrible characters. Edit. Heroes. High frame rate 3D. Peter Jackson pushed so hard for it with the first Hobbit movie, saying it was going to revolutionize the movie experience. Instead it made the CGI look like video game quality graphics, and it made everyone look like they were moving too fast to be real. The Machida era. Socialism. Cyberpunk. 3D televisions. 3D movies for that matter. Some hype at first, but at least around where I live they are more expensive. Seems like a huge pain to pay more for a feature that at best is okay, and at worst is fairly annoying. The 21st century. We were promised flying cars, service robots and the 30-hour work week. We got a pandemic and bad Wi-Fi. Cloud gaming like Stadia. Krabby Patty with jellyfish jelly. Pretty patties. Vikings was trying so hard to ride in Game of Thrones' success, but once got ended with a tie ending. Vikings died with Ragnar. Paperless office. Over and over again. Our managers reminded us that we are working in a paperless office environment. Never happened in my very large company. I have not heard paperless office in years now. The Fantastic Beasts series. The whole HP fandom was so hype. The first two movies were some of the worst I've ever seen, and JK turned out to be someone a lot of HP fans reconsidered supporting because of her anti-trans views. Big flop. Virtual reality. It has threatened to go big since the 1980s. And yet even the modern version, which looks and feels amazing, hasn't caught on. I think there is something fundamental about the difficulty in moving your character while not being able to see a keyboard controller that is so restrictive to gaming. I wonder whether the breakthrough application of VR will be non-gaming related, movies etc. Google Fiber. I was hyped to change the industry. I don't know if this counts, but Bella Thorne was hired to be Disney's next big star, trying to emulate Miley Cyrus' career a little. Then everyone liked Zendaya better. 2020. 2020 was going to be an ultimate year for partying, for Americans. At least. 4/20 technically the whole month. Cinco de Mayo on Taco Tuesday. Independence Day on a Saturday. Halloween on a Saturday and a full moon and the end of daylight saving time, which meant 1 extra hour of Halloween partying. Christmas on a Friday. And finally, New Year's Eve was on a Thursday, which meant the next year would begin with a 3-day weekend. This great combination happens when a leap year begins on a Wednesday. The previous time it happened was 1992 and it's not going to happen again until 2048. Graphene. It was supposed to be the best material. It's still talked about in research like crazy. So much of modern electronic materials research focuses on 2D materials like graphene and MOS2. Graphene can do anything except leave the lab. Third Reich. Cyberpunk 2077. Supposed to be the game that killed GTA V, but it only lasted about 2 weeks and was filled with bugs. The Area 51 raid. Let's be honest. That was either gonna end with a bunch of random parties. Or a lot of corpses. It ended with the former. WUPHF. Folding phones. Don't give up yet. Everyone including Apple are working on a folding screen. So we'll be back to flip phone soon. Took me a second to realize you weren't referring to flip phones. Which definitely had their moment. Now it just seems like yet another case of we can't come up with anything useful to make you replace your current hardware in 1-2 years. So we made something useless up instead. Just like so many things in this thread, 3D TV being the most mentioned one. PBF, they are way too new to be considered a flop. That fake fat they put in chips in the 90s that made everyone poop their pants. Edit. Thanks for the silver. Obligatory, of course. My top comment is Marcus Russell. Google Stadia. Watch Dogs apparently meant to have next gen graphics, turned out to be the European Super League. Modular phones. I think the original one was called Phone Blocks and then it got backed up by Google. Betamax. Betamax was actually pretty big for a while. VHS just surpassed it because the tapes had longer playtimes initially via extended play modes, which meant you could fit an entire football game on one tape. Something you couldn't do on Beta initially, but was a big deal because recording things off TV to watch later was the primary purpose of these tape recorders. Pre-recorded content like movies wasn't a big draw at first. And they were really expensive to buy. Like $100 or more for one movie. Sony introduced longer tapes later on, but it was too little too late. Obviously there's the myth that VHS won because of PRN. But that's not true. There was PRN on Beta. Sony created the format, but you can't dictate what the tapes are used for. They weren't in a position to allow or disallow PRN on their format any more than JVC was with VHS. VHS won because the tapes could fit more content than Beta. Dippin' Dots. Semicolon. Been the ice cream of the future for 40 years now it seems. Semicolon. Edit. I also love Dippin' Dots, who doesn't? But when you've been claiming your product is the future for nearly half a century. When is the future? Video phones.